All right, so I should see you.
Oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
I do have an echo.
Yeah, I
Do
see
have an
that.
echo.
All right. Can you still hear me?
Can't hear you now.
How about now?
That's good.
Although, oh, you know what? Maybe I have a tab open. There we
Yeah,
go.
I can hear you fine now. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Awesome. So here we go. So yeah, welcome to Jam Sessions. Today I'm joined with Mubs, Mubashar Iqbal. I hope I pronounced
Yep.
that semi okay.
No, all good. That's why everybody calls me Mubs though, because that's much easier.
Totally. But yeah, Mubs is a prolific creator, indie maker, and he's just, I guess I've been following his work for a long time. He's been pumping out a bunch of stuff, a lot of stuff on Product Hunt. Now, what year did you won the Golden Kitty one year, right?
2016. Yeah, so
Nice.
it's been a while, but yeah, it was one of the early. I think it was the second one that they ran. It was 2015. I think was the first one when Peter Levels won it, and then I won a year after that.
Awesome. Yeah. So obviously, been following you for a while. You have a lot of cool projects, so I'm sure we'll get into those. Jam sessions is really kind of a space just to meet up and talk and jam with people who are doing interesting stuff. And so I definitely want to get into all the stuff and projects that you're working on. I'm feel free to get into some of the stuff I'm working on if you want to hear about it. I think we're going to have
Absolutely.
probably a lot of stuff to talk about regarding Bluesky and stuff you're doing with Bluesky directory and then stuff I'm doing with starter packs and all that good jazz.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. I mean, yeah, excited to finally have the chance to chat, and yeah, I'm sure that it's. I was doing a little bit of reading about yourself as well, and just to kind of catch up and stuff. And I think there's some similarities in terms of career path and how we handle side projects and things like that too. So I think it should be a fun conversation here.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, even I think one of the most interesting kind of similarities we have is you actually worked at a agency in New York, or that was based out of New York, and also was it uh, did they have a French studio? Yeah,
Paris studio as well.
Paris
Yes.
studio. Yeah. So yeah, Area 17. And
Yep.
when I moved to New York in like '07, and I started working for an agency called Fantasy Interactive. And so
Okay.
I worked there for a couple years and then I moved over to Vimeo. And then at some point I caught wind of like Area 17. I was like, oh man, that's like an agency I would actually be interested in joining at some point if I got tired of doing the
Yeah.
product stuff, but I never quite got there. But I definitely use them as inspiration. You could probably tell from my portfolio. I stole some
Yeah.
typography and some other kind of minimalist styles from it.
I know. I mean, that actually one of the things that I really loved about Area 17 was they were very open and very sharing in terms of like their approach to interface and kind of how things should look and be organized and stuff. They actually publish what they call the Pixel School back then. So all sort of interface people, all UI people, and even some engineers who joined Area 17 were kind of taken through this school. So that's how they all kind of had a shared view of how things should be kind of organized and how things should look, and in terms of having a shared vision in terms of kind of what projects should kind of look like. And they did publish that, so anybody even outside Area 17 can kind of learn that same philosophy as well. And it's funny because yeah, I ended up having two different stints at Area 17 as well. I worked there for a while. I left and went to work for I went to work for an agency that's more upstate New York, where I live. And then I ended up I went up, I did some freelancing again, and then had kind of had a second stint at Area 17 as well.
Mm, cool. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're so good. And I still like check out their stuff to this day. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, sorry, when did you move on from Area 17?
Most recently, I think it was during COVID. So I think that was 2021, 22 was like my second stint at Area 17. I have to I This is the one thing that LinkedIn is kind of good for, is when I try and figure out like where and when I worked in sort of past jobs. So yeah, actually no, it was actually earlier than that. So 2020 was kind of my sort of last time at Area 17. I actually went to work for a startup out in Austin after that. And so I was at the startup in Austin for about 4 years, and then for the last year, yeah, I guess just to give a little bit more info, background wise, yes, I've been freelancing essentially for about the last year after that last kind of startup, fintech startup out of Austin. Was kind of trying to figure out like kind of what to do, so just kind of fell into freelancing because it's kind of like the easy way without having to make a big choice about like what the future looks like.
Yeah, totally.
And then around October time this last year in 2024 was kind of when I kind of moved to Bluesky and kind of started working on projects on Bluesky. And yeah, and I'm hoping 2025 is going to be doing more of my own projects, doing less freelancing, and hopefully they'll be in the Bluesky ecosystem, I think.
Yeah, rad. Yeah, that's kind of, I've been juggling like two clients right now. And yeah, my goal for 2025 is to create a little bit more margin with some personal projects that will sustain and be able to offset some of the client stuff. And then, I guess keep the freedom of being able to retain those or not, or if something happens to
Right.
go awry with one of them, I have a little bit of a backup cushion.
Right. Yeah, I mean yeah, because I've run an agency in the past as well. Like when I first moved to New York, I was in the city and working at a startup and kind of running a sort of agency on the side, kind of spun that out and kind of did that a little bit more full time for a while. And it's not my favorite thing. Like it's when you get into running an agency, you're running an agency. You're not building websites anymore. You're not
Totally.
designing websites. You're doing the business of an agency, doing HR and planning and all of those things. And I sat down, looked at it one day, and I was like, this isn't what I enjoy doing. This running an agency takes its own skill set, its own things that people like to do. And I was like, well, I like to build things. I like to build websites and build experiences and apps and things like that. And running an agency, that's not what you get to do. And so as much as I like working on lots of different projects with lots of different clients and things like that, that's one reason I liked working at an agency, because you got that variety of lots of different kinds of projects and clients and things like that. Running an agency just wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I think this idea of like doing freelancing, but then hopefully pivoting to a few projects that are my own, that I can rely on for income and stuff like that, I think would be ideal. We'll see if it works out.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always just tricky. But the flexibility of freelancing, I love it because to your point, you get to see so much and you're
Yeah.
working on different client projects or even the agency stuff. And sometimes you get paid to learn new technology or you have to implement something that you wouldn't normally do if you were just following
Yeah.
your own kind of will or
Yeah.
in curiosity. And so to be able to kind of be forced into that and also kind of run into all those rough edges, I'm always talking about like finding the rough edges and really how can you do that and then have that inspire potentially your next side project and whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where like most of the good ideas that I've had in terms of side projects and things in the past have been usually when I'm working at a job somewhere and there's some task that you have to do, there's something that you have to do that you're forced to do because it's part of your role in your responsibility, and you're like, well, if I had this tool, it would save me X amount of time or save me X amount of money or just not make me hate my life so much. So you end up kind of building that thing, and and fortunately, it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of other people who have to do this thing as well, and kind of really hate it as well. But yeah, no, I think agency work is a great way to kind of get your feet wet and just learn lots of different ways to tackle uh, problems with different technology as well. I think I've talked to a bunch of engineers in the past, and some of them are I don't know if they're fortunate or not, but they've worked their entire career with one stack, and it's like it's
Yeah.
JavaScript and that's all they ever do, or it's Ruby on Rails and that's all they ever do. And for myself, because I'd been in agency world for such a long time, and actually agency world with like Fortune 500 customers, you kind of have to use whatever stack they come to you with because they're not going to switch their stack to match you. And so, I've ended up having to do Java and PHP and JavaScript and Ruby on Rails and like just based on whatever stack the client had, and had to kind of figure out how to make things work in their stack, which actually made it, I think, again, for my side projects, I ended up being exposed to a bunch of technology that I would have normally been. And even though I still do mostly PHP now with Laravel, there was a lot of stuff that I learned when I was on a project doing Ruby on Rails stuff, and PHP still hadn't got to the point where it's matured to now. But there was a lot of stuff that Ruby on Rails was doing really well, especially in terms of how you interface with the database and the view layer abstractions and stuff like that. That it's pretty standard now. Like a lot of the frameworks in PHP have a lot of those things as well. But I wouldn't have known about them, as sort of early as I did, unless I'd been pulled into a Ruby on Rails project. And
Yeah,
so, yeah,
totally.
so just having that exposure makes life, I think it just expands your experiences and skill set as well.
Yeah. And actually, maybe slightly going back to the Area 17 stuff, you all had there's like a content management system. Was that Twine
Yeah.
or
Uh,
I forget what was it called? Oh,
Twill, it was
Twill.
called.
Twill. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I tell this is another one of those like claims to fame, but so my first job out of university was working for a little startup in England, and the first thing they asked me to build was a content management system. So I built in CGI in using C code as a module for the Apache web server. I built a content management system for a around the world yacht race. And so they used my content managers to update the website in terms of like news about like what was happening in the race as they went around the world. And so ever since then, I've kind of had to build content management systems. It felt like I did for a large part of my career, but it's now quite funny because in Laravel, there's Quill as a CMS and Statamic. I'm not sure if you've heard of Statamic as
yeah.
well as a CMS. So Statamic, I built the first version with Jack McDade when he lived in upstate New York as well. So there's that as a CMS. There's Twill as a CMS, and I had a hand in building that when I worked at Area 17 as well. So if you want a content management system, I'm probably your person.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've definitely rolled a few of my own back in the day. I actually looked at almost using Twill on a project
Yeah.
because, yeah, I would say, I was at that agency. Then I went over to Vimeo. That was actually a PHP monorepo,
Right.
all hand rolled framework because this was like pre Code Igniter and Laravel and all that
Right.
stuff. And actually, when I was hired there at Vimeo, this was still kind of like pre or right on the verge of like HTML5 video. So I had to
Okay.
rewrite the Vimeo video player in Flash. And then did a bunch of other projects, obviously, for Vimeo. And then after I moved on with them, I think I came into, I discovered Laravel maybe like towards the last year or two. So back in like maybe like 2015, 2016. And yeah, just started building some stuff on there. So a lot of my like early side projects post Vimeo were all Laravel. And
Awesome.
yeah, I'd say like it's been a blend of like either Laravel or Node, Nest, JS kind of stuff since then,
Awesome.
depending on the project.
Yeah, I've even though I've been exposed to, like I said, I built stuff. My one of the A lot of the early stuff was in C because that was the language back when I started working. But second job was more like Java work on the server side. But since PHP come out, I've kind of stayed tangential to PHP. Like I started using PHP, I think in 1999 was when I first like built my first thing with PHP. Still doing a bunch of C code and Java code back then as well. But then because I was using PHP, kind of introduced me to the WordPress world as well. So I'm still doing WordPress stuff to this day as well. And then yeah, just kind of like you said, rolled a bunch of my own frameworks at the beginning, just to improve my efficiency with PHP. And then I heard about Laravel, and pretty much since version one, I've been trying to use it as much as I can, and it's
Totally.
improved leaps and bounds ever since. And yeah, they've done an amazing job of making it. It is probably one of the first frameworks that's actually optimized for shipping stuff. Like there's been a lot of frameworks I've used over the years that have been optimized for engineering, I call it, like in terms of like just making sure that you do things the correct way from an engineering perspective, versus Laravel always seemed to me like, yes, obviously it has a lot of that stuff in terms of doing things the right way, in terms of organizing your files and organizing your code and make sure that you write code the right way. But it always felt like it was always that was important, but the most important thing was to make it as easy as possible for you to ship stuff, which I found refreshing because nobody had really focused on like how do you actually get code onto a server so people can use it, as opposed to how do you write the most elegant, simple, efficient code.
Oh, totally. I think the focus is definitely on optimization over opinions. Because I feel like a lot of frameworks, it's just about opinions. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I feel like Laravel kind of it obviously has its opinions, heavy opinions, but also optimized just for getting something spun up real quick. And the fact that it's on PHP and that you could just throw it
Yeah.
on any old host and it's
I mean, honestly, people always ask me how I was able to ship stuff so fast, and I kept trying to tell them it wasn't me. Like, I was like, "Well, I used Laravel, and like, authentication, models to get in, the CRUD stuff that you have to build to get stuff
oh
out
yeah,
in
the
and out
queue
the
workers are so
DB.
good.
the cubics or something. I was like, look, that's my secret weapon. It's not a secret. I tell everybody about it. And like, how can you ship so fast? I'm like, well, I used Laravel to write my code. I use Forge to manage the servers to put the projects on a server somewhere. And so literally I can write code, have it up on a server within a few hours, really. And it's got a lot of the functionality just already ships with it. So that I don't have to build any of that stuff. I actually
Yeah,
focus on the code for the
authentication and
application.
yeah,
Yeah. And so yeah, so I mean, using the right tools is it makes it does give you a good head start. The queuing is stuff that the I think the reason that I think I think the biggest reason that I like Laravel is it allows you to start small, but then to grow the project into something bigger, more substantial. You're not having to like rewrite it from scratch. You're not having to like throw away a bunch of stuff and say, okay, now I need to write version 2 or whatever. It's easy to incrementally just add more functionality, more feature, and use more of the framework in a way that makes sense to your project as well. That means that you're not wasting time, and that's kind of one of the reasons that, and we can talk about it more in later, or we can talk about it more now. But when I started working on Bluesky directory, I was able to get things rolling pretty easily and pretty fast, and to have a site up and running, pretty easily. But then to be able to like have the site grow as the site has grown with all the starter packs and things like that. I feel like with other frameworks and with other tools, I would have had it would have been a lot slower because I would have had to like stop and restart and things like that. Versus using Laravel, I was able to kind of start how I wanted to, but then just continue to evolve and continue to add it in a way that kind of makes a lot of sense as well.
totally. Yeah, I mean, um, yeah, I've definitely started so much and have kind of like optimized and evolved it. Um, but at the same time, I feel like there's certain projects that I bid off when I was working at an agency as just to try to optimize my workflow. So I ended up building a like a lighthouse test runner because I was tired of the inconsistent results and trying to figure out how to like compare most recent tests against last tests and see how it's evolving. So I wanted to have a history of all of it. So I set up a Laravel project called Optimized Toolset, and I could just throw in a bunch of URLs and have those run on a cron or a schedule or whatever, and fire those off. But over the years, I've added so many URLs to it that it's just tearing down the server that it's on. Because I never got around to basically like getting another box to run the test on versus having
The
the
queues.
API and some other stuff. So it's like a tool that I just like use my own, but it's also like DDoSed by my own use.
Uh, no, I mean, but and even that, like, I mean, it's fairly like. So when I went to work for the fintech company out of Austin, like I built the first version of the tool that we built there with Laravel as well. Just everything was running on one server. I just had one web server, had the one server, had the website, had the Laravel code, the front end, like the back end, all ran on one server. And then eventually we just with and all inside of Forge, like I just added a second server. We moved the DB onto that server, so we kind of spread the load a little bit on. Eventually, got to the point where there's so many queue jobs that need to run that I just set up another server. We just deployed the same code to that server as well as the main application server, and all the queue jobs ran off of that server, but all sharing the same database as well. And it was all stuff that didn't really have to change, anything in the code to kind of make all that work. It was just change the configuration so that we know that the
The queues run
queues
on
over
this IP
here
or whatever.
and the
And
queues run. Yeah, basically it was just basically you just had to route to the one server for the IP resolved to that for the web server, that queued server. We just didn't run the queue scheduler on the web server instead on the app server. It only ran on that other server, and that was it. Like that was how you had to set that up. So it kind of made it very easy to kind of scale. And yeah, we I think for the first year we kind of ran on $20 a month hosting, and we I think we had raised at that point $20 million, and it's a fintech company. We basically loaned money to SaaS companies. It wasn't a loan, it was what's called factoring, where we
Oh
kind
yeah,
of,
yeah.
yeah, so you're buying future revenue. It's not a loan for financial reasons, it's not for legal reasons, it's not a loan. And yeah, so for the first year, I think at that point we'd issued 10 million dollars out to SaaS companies, and we were running the entire infrastructure on $20 a month.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I also feel like I need to look into Forge again because I use Forge too for my Laravel projects, but I don't feel like I saw the carve out stuff to be able to quickly spin up like secondary servers on some of the stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, you basically just add another server. They've changed the options now in terms of like it used to be that you just spun up a server, but now you can say I want this to be a
Like a worker,
DB server or just a queue worker, or if you want to run Elasticsearch or
Melisearch,
Search and those
Redact,
kind of
yeah.
things. Yeah, so you can specify what kind of server that you want to run, and it'll install just the piece of software that you need, as opposed to installing everything. So it's kind of optimized the server for you. Yeah, it's funny because I just got the invoice for Forge, and I think I'm still on the $140 a year plan because I signed up the first year that it launched. So I've got access to like all of the features and functionality for like the lowest price that you can get because I signed up and have been a customer since the first year that it's been out. Yeah, I told people to sign up for it now, and they're like, it's so expensive. I'm like, I'm like, I'm
I don't know what
sorry,
to
but I
tell you.
signed up a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, what you're paying for like 3 months now, I probably pay for the entire year, so
Totally.
it's working out well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still on a $15 a month plan, so I must have got in pretty early too.
Exactly, but it's really awesome.
Totally.
Although I'm kind of excited to see like they've been working on that new
Oh, Laravel Cloud.
Laravel cloud. I haven't got access yet, but I'm kind of hoping soon. But it sounds
Yeah.
really interesting as well to see kind of what the future of hosting will kind of look like as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the good thing that Laravel does is it takes a lot of the questions out of the equation when you start getting started. Like you're running like a local Postgres or MySQL
Yeah.
database or whatever, um, and then you can evolve from there to go to like a hosted version if you need to. Um, but there still are those decisions and trade offs, and being able to know which ones when to make is, I think, what it still takes. Some senior ish. You need to be around the block a couple times to know what to choose.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I mean, like again, I mean, touching on Bluesky again, like it was funny because I went from it was the same kind of scenario, but instead of a year, it all happened in the space of like a month. But I just threw up the first version of the site on like some server that I already had running. I was like, this site's not going to use a lot of resources. It's going to be really cheap and easy to run. I'll just throw it up on this server. It's just going to be basically static HTML, kind of thing at the beginning, and then obviously I started to index all of the starter packs, and it went from a few thousand starter. It went from I think I started with like 60 or so starter packs. I think I was
Were
doing
you
it
were
kind
you
of
also hand
manually
you were manually adding those to the directory, right?
at the beginning. Yeah, my idea was that it was all going to be manually like
Curated.
curated
Yeah.
stuff. And because I didn't realize just how many starter packs there were, and so yeah, so I started to like build up scripts to like search the sort of user list and see what starter packs people had. And eventually, it was just like I can't do this manually, and it grew. I think I think by the time I actually launched like the starter pack only section, I think there was probably about 10,000 starter packs in there. I think we're up to, yeah, I'm sure you probably know. I think we're just shy of 200,000 now in terms
It,
of starter packs. I
actually,
think
it's
it's like,
over. It should be over two
oh,
hundred thousand. Yeah, that's the
wow.
thing with So I think so. You started Blue Sky Directory, and my read on it was you're going to basically like curate all the tools and other
Yeah,
resources and stuff. But then obviously when starter pack started taking off, it made total sense to add that to keep the fever alive. And there was also no real good way to browse or explore starter packs without
right,
having to go to individual person profile on
right,
Blue Sky and then tab into their starter packs. And I don't know, unless they're just sharing the link or in the feed. But
right.
yeah, Discovery was definitely a broken thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, originally the plan was just to do just like a normal run of the mill directory with some like curated starter packs, some curated feeds, some curated lists,
Profiles or whatever.
and and then applications and clients and things that you might want to use that use the stack. And then I mean, starter packs are probably one of like the coolest features in terms of like how to solve like the onboarding issue and how do you know who to follow, who's here on this particular platform, things like that. And yeah, I mean, I went through the same cycle that a bunch of people that somebody referred me to. Although I signed up in like April of last year, of 2023, I think I signed up kind of originally, but I stopped using it because it just wasn't, it wasn't ready yet. I don't think,
Yeah.
like it wasn't what I needed at the time, I guess. And then I think it was actually Justin Jackson started talking about Blue Sky on even on X. He was just kind of posting about it. And so that's kind of what reignited my interest in it. I was like, okay, let's see kind of where they're at, what features they've added, what functionality, who's here as well. Was
Mm-hmm.
was the sort of it was like the big important question. I think it's a social network. If there's no people, it doesn't matter what the features and functionality are.
Totally.
And so yeah, so I and he had built so I think he had built a spreadsheet a while back, which was just like, here's everybody who's on X that who also might have an account on Blue Sky. And so I added myself to that. I think that was back in like August time, kind of last year. And then when starter packs came out, Justin created the starter pack with everybody who was in the spreadsheet. And so that was my first exposure to kind of starter packs, and suddenly started getting a bunch of followers because people were using his starter pack to sign up, and then they're just following everybody in the starter pack. Um, and so I kind of went through the same thing though. I was like, well, that's a cool starter pack. Who else has got some cool starter packs? And I was trying to see who's in the indie maker world, who's in the Laravel world, who's in the sort of web development space that I might want to follow. And I had the same problem everybody else did, is like, unless you know what the starter pack is, you don't know what the starter pack is. And so the directory of the first tab at solving that, I was like, even if you have to do it manually, just knowing who has a good starter pack would solve that initial problem. But then when you got like 10 million people joining in the space of the week
Oh
after the
yeah.
election happening, that just blew up. There was like, it went from a few thousand starter packs to 200,000 of them
Yeah.
now. That it just, yeah, you just couldn't do it manually anymore. And people, I mean, it was stuff that I didn't know anything about too. Like people were asking me about starter packs of in subjects and topics and areas that I was like, I have no idea what that even means, let alone who to follow in that space. And so just automating it as much as we could. And so yeah, I started automating it. I mean, my initial thing was, I think I just used the search to see when somebody shared a link to a starter pack,
Oh,
and then
gotcha.
automatically indexed it through that. And then eventually it was like, well, it's all in the fire hose. We know it's all there. Let's watch the fire hose, see when people are making these things, see when people are still sharing it. I can still see in the fire hose people are sharing them as well. And then yeah, so eventually ended up, it's still, I mean, I don't think mine's still 100%. I don't think I've got everything in there yet. Because there's still a lot of the older stuff that people haven't shared since, and I haven't gone back and indexed everybody's starter packs. but it's it's probably not. I don't think it needs. I don't think you need 100% coverage in something like this. It's what's useful and interesting, and more of the newer stuff is more useful and interesting.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And also, once you start relying on the fire hose, it's like you're on the hook for making sure that service is remaining connected to the fire hose. So I definitely had it. I mean, I think there was a time where Bluesky maybe had some issues with even the fire hose
Yeah,
itself, and then that would go down, and then that would take down my service. So I had to make sure I had to start it back up so I didn't lose too many packs coming in. Now I didn't
yeah,
take it the one step further of actually looking at posts that
yeah,
reference the starter pack. That would have been a smart thing for me to do early on. But right now I'm just looking at basically update, creates, and deletes to try to keep
right.
that pool fresh. But and actually I think my longer term goal was starter packs at least because like again I think I got in roughly around the same time you did. I was invited again sometime last year by a friend, and I found maybe like three people that I knew. You know, you know like the early adopters, and you're
Yeah,
like searching around to see like if they're on and who are they following, and if they're only following like five people, you know
right.
that there's not a lot of people around here. But
Yeah,
I totally agree. It was like late October, November time frame when everyone started hopping over there. I think I also caught wind of Justin Jackson's first like PHP Friends of Laravel or I forget what it was.
horrible friends. Yeah,
Yeah, Laravel Friends
yeah.
starter pack. I think I tried to get on there because I was
Well,
like,
like I was already in it. I was because I was in the spreadsheet, so I was already in it. So it was awesome.
yeah, totally. Um, and so yeah, and then to your point, I didn't realize that you were actually going to kind of like start curating starter packs because I saw the tools and stuff, and I was like, oh well, it'd be cool to build a tool around starter packs. So I think even just the concept of starter packs are a really cool idea,
Yeah,
both in the concept of Bluesky, but even beyond. You
yeah,
know, there's a lot of people who probably have a Twitch or a YouTube
yep,
or whatever that I would be, if I'm interested in following on one platform, I probably want to follow them on all the different
right.
ones. And so I started thinking about, well, let's see if we can actually just start curating and exploring all the different starter packs that are on Bluesky. And that is where I tried to get as like full of a catalog as I can because you want to, like ha- have as many options there. But at the same time, I do feel like there's opportunities to even expand on that profile and then still use those starter packs as a way to explore and discover people. And
Yeah,
then
I
even
mean,
it's just,
it's
and I guess in addition to that, some of the tools I want to add to starter packs is actually discovering the starter packs that you're in and then
right,
exposing those on your profile. So that way it's a little bit
right.
fuller, richer discovery. And it's also like, I don't know like what other starter packs I'm in at this point. I think I got added to a
Right.
bunch early on, but it'd be fun to just see like when you're added or removed or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like when I started working on the directory, and this is the fun thing with side projects is like I didn't really have like a vision, right? Like I wasn't like this is my 5 year plan for this, right? Like it was just like I was like I want to build something, so I started building, like the sort of directory because it seemed like the sort of cool and obvious thing to work on. And then you have the flexibility at that point to react to what's happening around you. And that's kind of what I reacted to because the minute I started posting about the curated list, that's when every like piled on was like, yeah, but why didn't you add mine? And why didn't you add mine? And why haven't you added mine? And why haven't you added mine? And I was like, so many of them. And so at that point, you kind of know that there's a lot more happening under the surface here. That if you can surface that, there's going to be a lot of interest in it, and I'm absolutely in the right place at the right time in terms of like so many people joining moving from X and Threads and all those other platforms and moving over here. And really, what really
As I say, you got a
ignited
lot of
everything
early
was like
links, right?
New York Times,
Yeah,
Wired, Forbes, just about every publication, TDNet, and TechCrunch and everything. Just so, like I said, just so happened to be that I think even though a few of us started working on, actually, I'm not even sure I was the first person who started working on it because I think there was people pre-October. I think starter packs came out in like August. I think was when they
yeah,
were like added as a feature on the platform. There were some people who were working on this whole idea of like, can we collect all the starter packs? But So when I started working on it, it was more of a curated thing. And plus I did my whole like building public thing as well. So people knew what I was building and they knew what features I was adding and what I was trying to achieve, I think. And that made it a little bit easier. They all came to me because they all knew that I was working on this whole starter pack feature and featured items and things like that. So I mean, I think that building public thing
oh,
really
totally.
gave me that edge, especially in terms of like links and stuff, because people referred to the thread that I wrote about building it and things like that. That's where I think all the SEO stuff has really added to, like, because I think the website's still getting, since the holidays have, since everybody's back at work now, I still getting about 4,000 visits a day on the site still.
Yeah,
And that's mostly because I've got so many links out there that are sending people to it. And that's all because I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Everybody's interested in starter packs. Everybody saw what I was doing. Everybody linked to it because it was like the new hot thing sort of at the time. And yeah, now I'm just trying to figure out, like, kind of, obviously the sort of nice thing about what we do is we as we build things, we're kind of automating things, right? Like we're reading off the fire hose. I don't have to manually add starter packs anymore. They're all just getting added automatically. That frees up your time to think about, like, what's next, like what's the next feature what's the next functionality that I can add. And yeah, I've had a lot of the same thoughts in terms of, like, even though I love starter packs, I think they're an awesome idea. I don't think that they're ultimately how you find your audience, right? Or you find your community, because it relies on other people to put you into a pack, right? Like that's the whole
yeah,
idea of
yeah.
a
That's
starter
true.
pack, is that, yeah, other people are assigning you to these things. And so that's why I started, like, the whole idea of a profiles on Bluesky directories. It's like, why do I have to rely on other people to put me into these things? Like, there should be these things, these topics, and these areas of interest that I can assign myself to. And so with the profile now, anybody can, with their Bluesky account, they can log in, and once they're signed up, they can from it. I think I've got a list of like 300 different topics and things like that. You can just
Oh, cool.
assign yourself one.
Are you using a
And obviously, I
labeler
can expand to that. Not yet. So this is all off of the
off the platform?
platform right now. Yeah, it's all off chain stuff. It's all happening. Eventually, I think if there's a lexicon that I could add to, like, so you can take these assignments that you've given yourself and put them onto your profile with a lexicon. I think it's probably the right way to do it, rather than with specifically with a tabler, although that might come at some point as well.
Totally.
Um, so yeah, so I think, so right now I think there's about 800 or so profiles that either I've assigned some kind of topic to, or people have just come to the website, logged in, and kind of picked their own one. So you can come to the directory now. You can say, I want to find people who talk about politics, or I want to find people who talk about science, or I want to find people who talk about startups. And you can just see a list of those people, and you can search through those lists and see who's active on those kind of things. I think longer term that kind of makes more sense because you're self-selecting then. I still think there's still some opportunity for somebody. Probably won't be me because I think it's a lot of manual work. But in terms of, like, verifying who's a journalist and who's an athlete and who's an artist and who's an actor and those kind of things. I think people want to know about celebrities and things like that, but that you kind of have to have some kind of manual verification process as well. If Bluesky isn't going to do that, I don't have the time or the resources to make that happen. But I think that's the other layer that I'm hoping somebody else handles it, because I'll just lean into that and say, well, if some other third party organization has said this is an actor, this is a politician, this is a journalist, I can just bleed that into the directory as well and just add that as another way to filter and search,
Totally.
sort of as well.
Now, when did you add the profiles? Because I don't know if I've played around with that yet.
That was right before Christmas, I think. So yeah, kind of got lost a little bit, I think, in the
The
sort of
holiday
holidays.
downturns.
Exactly. But yeah, that was something like I was trying to think about like what version 2 of starter packs looked like, and I love the idea of starter pack because it's not just about who's the cool friends that you have that you want people to sign up for. People have been doing it around specific topics and specific interests and specific sort of activism and things like that. I was like, that seems to be the right way in terms of organizing these things. We need to know who's posting about these particular topics, who's posting about these issues, but you should be able to put yourself into that list. You shouldn't have to rely
Totally.
on somebody else to put you into that list. And yeah, there's other signals. Like, just because I've assigned myself doesn't mean I'm actually talking about that stuff. Like, it doesn't. So you can use other signals, things like how many followers you have, how many following you have, how old your account is. There's other signals. I think they're going to add vouching as a mechanism on the
Mm,
platform. Like, somebody else can vouch for somebody to say they worked with them or they worked at this organization, or I trust this person in some way. I think that's all attributes that we can use to sort who is in that profile list. So I think I was just kind of setting it up for people who want to be in those lists. And then, okay, now that you're in that list, if there's 600 people in that list, what's the top 10 people that you should follow in that list, right? Like, we can
totally. Yeah.
use other signals to help you kind of surface who the right people are to follow, even though thousands of people might say they talk about that one thing. But yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about what's happening here is Bluesky to some degree has pushed a lot of the emphasis, a lot of the work, and a lot of the onus back to the community and says, look, we're a small team. We can't do all of this stuff. You guys need to do some of this stuff. And it's very cool to be able to do a lot of these things and actually have access to an open platform that lets us do a lot of these things. I'd love to do a lot of these things on Twitter and X as well, but we just can't. Well, unless you have lots of money, can pay $42,000 a year to get access to the API, or month rather,
Yeah.
and get access to the API and things like that. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the big things about me building on Bluesky because it was like Twitter is just so you just can't do it. Like you can't pay enough, way too expensive.
Right? Yeah. And look, I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, like, most of what I'm doing isn't going to make any money short term, long term, even potentially. I don't even know, other than people buying advertising slots and spending a little bit of money on ads. It's not like it's a SaaS that people are going to pay for every month or anything like that. So to pay 5,000-10,000 bucks a month to Twitter or to Bluesky in this case to build a platform that I think people would use if it existed, but it's going to be a huge thing. It's like, not something I can afford,
yeah,
and so, but I think that's the nice thing about having access to it as a community. You can build the tools that you think that are going to be really useful and interesting, even if it's not going to make any money, because it's not costing you an arm and a leg to be able to
exactly.
operate that thing as well. So yeah, I think right now I'm probably still spending, because of the scale. I'm sure you run into this as well, but at one point, I was getting, I think, 50, 60, 70,000 people come to the website every day. I had to scale the servers up a fair bit. I think I'm still spending somewhere between 100 and 200 a month on
Oh,
kind of
wow.
infrastructure costs now. And that was mostly just to handle the sort of load at the time. I could probably scale it back to down a little bit now, but it's almost easier just to leave it where it is because I know those surges are going to happen again. Like, there's talk around the inauguration time. There's going to be another surge. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg just announced that they're
Oh
basically
yeah,
not doing the sort of trust and safety is being thrown out the window on threads and Facebook and stuff. We saw another wave of people kind of leaving and kind of arriving here as well. I think it's going to continue over the next 6 months, over the next years. It's not going to be, people aren't just going to stop using X, immediately. Like, not everybody's going to stop using it, but it's going to be a slow crescendo, and eventually we're going to be like, how do we get to 100 million people here?
yeah.
And we're going to wake up one day, it's going to be 100 million people here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down for it because I feel like Blue Sky feels like Twitter in the old days.
Yep.
I love the fact that my following is just the people who I'm following, and it's not a bunch of like injected stuff in between there. You can opt in to obviously the various different feeds that you want to have if you want to have different algorithms going on. But at the same time, you could also
Yep.
write your own if you want to, which is really cool.
Yep.
The flexibility and freedom over there just feels awesome. I just hope that they figure out a way to monetize it to keep it going because that's like the biggest thing. And I just, anytime you go with ads and trying to have to like pay for eyeballs to pay for
Right.
your company, I just feel like that's just where it goes wrong and it's going to lose that magic. Um,
Yeah. I'm really hoping. I mean, I hoped when Twitter announced like you could pay for Twitter, you would pay for Pro or Premium, what the heck they called it. I kind of hoped that that would be the signal that they were going to rely less on ads, but I don't know what Elon did there. Like the whole like tying the verification check mark to you paying was like the wrong approach. Like because
yeah,
the two things they don't mean the same thing. So it was kind of a stupid way to kind of do that, I think. And no, I'm really optimistic in the fact that one, the Bluesky Corporation itself is set up as a public benefit corporation.
hmm,
So yes, they want to make money. Yes, it's a company. It needs to make money, otherwise it won't exist anymore. Um, but it's not the only reason that they're around. Although it feels like Twitter that's the only reason they're around is to make money. And so I'm really optimistic that
or just to
that
start fights,
or to influence
Yeah, exactly.
influence things. But I guess if you can afford to do that, he can, so it's okay.
Yeah,
But no, I'm really optimistic in terms of their philosophy, and their vision seems to align a lot with what Twitter originally was in terms of being the public square and so things like that. But also, I think I really hope and I think the plan is to launch the subscriptions first and then try ads if subscriptions aren't working. Because I think subscriptions without ads will work. The whole
yeah,
reason that I don't think subscription works on Twitter was because they didn't get rid of the ads. Like the whole point that me paying for Twitter, I thought was going to get rid of the ads, right? And it
exactly.
didn't. I almost felt like I saw more ads after they started doing that because I think what they had tried to do on Twitter is to incentivize people to post. So they took the subscription revenue and paid that back to people for the amount of interactions and views and impressions and things that they got. I was just paying so that it would support the platform. I didn't really need that money to come back to me for posting because I was getting a benefit for posting already, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
engaging with the audience, I'm using the platform. That's the advantage that I want. I don't need to be paid for being active. And I'm hoping on Bluesky that they actually use the revenue that they generate from subscriptions to run the company. Like, I hope they don't use it to pay back. Now, obviously, if they introduce a way where I can subscribe to an individual person and get extra content, things like that, then absolutely that should go back to the person that that I'm subscribing for. But if I'm subscribing to use
The
Blue
platform.
Sky
Yeah.
as a platform, that should go to pay to support the platform. It shouldn't go back to people who are posting stuff and being viral and so that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that over the next few months at least, I'm hoping that subscriptions are like the next thing that comes out, because if they can't, because exactly like you said, if they can't build a sustainable business, then yeah, in a year or so we'll be looking for a new place to hang our hats, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely down. I'm paying day one, like whenever they drop day zero. Um,
I mean, and look, honestly, it's not that expensive, right? Like, I mean, even Twitter was $8 a month or whatever.
mhm.
That's two lattes a month, two lattes a month or whatever it is. Like, on a platform that I use, I'm sure other people use it more than I do, but you're using it for hours a day. Like, I mean, you're really, and the value that you're pulling out of it too, in terms of the kind of information that you get and the kind of opportunities you get to talk to people that you wouldn't normally be able to talk to. That was the things I loved about Twitter and X originally too. Was it wasn't so much that I was just out there posting into a void. It led to meeting lots of interesting people. It led to work. It led to job opportunities, freelancing opportunities. Not because I just went there and posted I'm looking for a job. Like, it was because I was having conversations with people, making relationships with people that led to those things just all organically instead.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like with the track record so far, they've made a lot of the right decisions. Um,
Yeah,
obviously keeping everything as open as possible. The fact that I can pull down a GitHub repo and potentially even tweak the client that I'm
yeah,
using and build my own if I want to use one, I mean, that's pretty rad.
yeah. Yeah, and look, I'm sure they're going to make mistakes along the way because they're human, and everybody's going to. I mean, like, there's been controversies about like who do you ban and who do you not ban,
Oh,
and
yeah,
what do
yeah.
you ban them for, and things like that. Like, I mean, but that's also the point of building a federated experience too, right? Like, I mean, I know there's not too many people running their own instances yet of sort of their own app view and their own PDSs and things like that. It's still fairly new. It's people are still working out how it all works. But long term, future tense, anybody can run their own PDS, anybody can run their own app view. They can ban whoever they want to. They can make sure they don't see content from those people. That's the federated future. That's the future where you exactly some things you said earlier about you being able to control your experience. You control what feeds you see, what lists you see, the people that you see. Yeah, we have some control over that now with the functionality that's there. But long term, I think that's just only going to increase over time, and also I think also get easier over time. Like right now, it is fairly complicated to set up your own PDS, but it was somewhat complicated to set up your own feeds until
Yeah.
somebody Raise and Blue Sky feeds have made it where you can point and click now and make your own feeds as well. And I think as the platform matures, there's going to be more of those kind of things where it's now going to just be, I'm going to run my own server. Okay, just going to point and click here, and now I've got my own server running instead. And I can control, I can set my own rules about what's acceptable and kind of what's not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be cool to watch it all go down and try to be part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, I guess regarding Blue Sky Directory, obviously you're talking about profiles and stuff. What other kind of things are you thinking about doing to evolve it or
Yeah, I think I want it to be longer term. I think I want it to be more self-service. I mean, at the beginning, the idea was that it was going to be like a manually kind of curated thing, right? In terms of like somebody being the filter in terms of what's listed and what's not listed and things like that. I think moving forward, now that I've got sort of OAuth working, and I know who's logged in, I know who they are. Want to list your own starter pack? I know who you are. I can go look on your account, like what starter packs you've made and things like that. Like we can do things like that now. So I think moving along, I think it's going to be leveraging the potential. I think that because I was there early, got all those cool backlinks from all those really high authority sites. I think I'm at a 44 domain ranking
Oh wow,
already,
congrats.
which is pretty after like 2 months is pretty insane.
Yeah,
According to Ahrefs, it's obviously we don't know what Google's kind of hating of that is. But yeah, just trying to leverage that now, like just trying to make sure that when people come, they land on the website, they kind of get the information that they're looking for. I think just trying to figure out what people are looking for, because I think that's the challenge of running a directory, is that you almost have to know what people are looking for and make sure it's there before they know that they're looking for it. Like
totally.
that was that was kind of the sort of fortunate thing about the starter packs, was I started building and started collecting, archiving them before they were really in vogue. And so when people started looking for them, that's where they came. And so now I'm trying to figure out like what's next in terms of like what are people going to be looking for in February, in March, in April, that hopefully they'll find on the directory. And that's partly why I think I wanted to add profiles, was because I saw this trend of people were searching for, first name, last name, Bluesky, searching for first name,
Mm-hmm.
last name, Twitter, even people looking for people's Twitter accounts and things like that. And so added profiles so that I could capture some of that. So because I think that's why I think like starter packs are cool, but ultimately you follow people, right? You follow topics and
Totally.
you follow people. And so if you can build a directory that has the people in it and that has them organized in a way that kind of makes sense as well, I think yeah, I'm not sure if you remember it, but um, Kevin Rose started this thing called We Follow back
Oh
in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
back in the day, when he worked at like the Tech TV and Dig and stuff like that. Back then, he started a thing called We Follow, and it was basically for Twitter, but it was just an organized directory of people.
Yeah.
And so I'm using that as an inspiration that I think people are still trying to figure out on social media. Who do you follow? Who's posting about these topics and these interests and things like that? It was acquired by about.com and then shut off. So it's
Oh.
not even live anymore. So
No
so not
reference.
any
You had to go way
competition.
back machine to.
Yeah, just in case somebody's looking for it. It's not actually live anymore. But I think that model still works in terms of how you find people to follow on social media. I think it's still a good model. I think from a search engine standpoint, that's the right way to. It's the long tail version of like what do you do for social media? It's the sort of long tail. I've already seen. I think I was getting something like 2,000 impressions a day on like people searching for starter packs and things like that.
Mhm.
And then I started adding profiles to the directory, and my impressions have got to about 20,000.
Oh
so
wow.
so yeah, so because people are searching for George Conway and Holly Young Fast, and just all and a bunch of people that I don't even know. But it's all automated in terms of like once they're added to the directory, then they just automatically gets added to the sitemap, automatically gets submitted to the search engines. And so it's a flywheel that I'm hoping, just as more people join Bluesky, more people search for people on Bluesky, and just continues to snowball from there, I think. But it's funny though, because originally the idea for the directory was to build a distribution opportunity. I think I called it originally, which was like, I'm going to build a directory. People are going to come to the directory to find cool stuff. I'm going to build other cool stuff that people will find in the
Oh yeah, yeah, totally.
directory. Yeah, like I mean, like that's the obvious thing. So yeah, so I
Like
think
I'm gonna
longer
fill this thing
term,
with all my tools. for Bluesky,
Exactly.
and I also
Exactly.
own the store, like
I,
the
I own the way that people are going to find the things they want to buy, hopefully. So
yeah.
yeah, so that was originally the idea, but obviously the directory itself is now much larger than it was originally intended to be. So I think it's going to take a lot of energy to kind of maintain that. But yeah, I think ultimately long term, the idea at least is to just build some of my own tooling and then have access to hopefully tens of thousands of people who are on the mailing list who come to the website every week, every month, and then say, "Hey, look, I built this cool thing. Maybe it's something you would actually pay to use every month instead of it being a free item." So that was originally the idea, and I think eventually, because I think that's the best way to actually get money from the platform. I think is that I don't think I could plaster the directory with lots of ads, and like people could, but I'm sure people would be willing to pay to kind of be on the directory itself. But to some degree, I think there's a fine line between lots of ads and not any ads at all. But how much money can you make without it cheapening the sort
Yeah.
of value there as well. So I think that's something. If I can get away with less ads, I think I would like to, and I think the sort of the obvious way is to use it as the distribution opportunity that I think it
Yeah.
originally was. That I think it was supposed to be.
Yeah, promote, basically use it to promote the other apps that you're building that you might be able to charge money for, and then just keep that as just like kind of free discovery point that happens to
Yeah,
promote the the apps
yeah,
you got.
I've had ideas I wanted to build for Twitter, and because of the API costs and things like that, I wasn't able to do that. And so I think there's some of those things. Like I'd like to build a scheduler, for example, that is doesn't work like the normal scheduler. It's got to do with more sort of evergreen content rather
Mm,
than posting content once and it just kind of landing and it just appearing once. So there's I I always like to build things that have their own unique twist to them. And so yeah, so a scheduler, but not like a normal scheduler that you don't just pile content in and it just appears. I'd rather build like a library of content because even even in an ideal world, even in the following feed that we have on Blue Sky, people still aren't going to see all of your content because they're going to be asleep while when you post, and there's or you might just not be on the platform that particular day because you have a life and you can't be on social media all the time.
totally.
And so there's ways that we can repost content from a library of content as a way to like fill in when we're not active, so that your old content can be seen by other people again, or it might just be they want to see it again because it's still a relevant piece of content that you might have posted a week ago or a month ago, kind of things like that. So scheduling sort of evergreen content, I think, is something I like to explore some more. And I think people would be willing to pay for that because it helps expand their reach and has their content seen by more people as well.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I think working on starter packs and getting involved in the Blue Sky API and using all their SDKs and stuff, definitely a lot of ideas come to mind. It's just hard not to
Yeah, and
find
it's
them.
yeah, and I mean, and just being on active on the platform, right? Like you see the opportunities because if you do actively engage with other people on the platform, you see what people are doing, how they're doing it, and you see opportunities there in terms of how you're engaging, how you're deciding what to engage with as well, and things like that. I think is going to be really important. There's going to be a lot of tools that are out there that I think are going to add a lot of value, not just AI automation stuff. Like I mean, I'm trying to stay far away from that as
Oh,
I
totally.
can because even though I love AI, like I use it when I write code and things like that. Like I think when it comes to social media, like the worst thing I think I could do right now is build like a tool that automatically replies to everybody who follows you. Like no, I don't want to do
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I think that's where, yeah, AI is great for coding, but like I don't want to have a podcast that AI is just regurgitating some information either based off of like my activity or not, and
Right.
trying to like generate all these random follows and like I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of even
I mean,
similar to like starter packs. Just to get back on that just
yeah,
for a second, I think the starter pack is cool, but I think I'm also in some starter packs where like I'm getting a lot of follows that I probably don't want or need.
right.
Um, so it's like great for my inflating my ego and thinking that I have this amazing follower base, but at the same time, I think being in some of those starter packs, it's it's really not providing the true value that you need. So to your point,
Right.
like self-selecting and also not having these weird AI automated things to try to inflate numbers artificially
Right.
that actually aren't really in creating any real connection or any real engagement.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like I said, there's lots of value in AI. I think in terms of assisting you in the work that you do, like and I think to some degree there is value in automating some interactions, but this is meant to be social media. It's meant to be your social network. It's meant to be your social interactions. If AI is doing everything for you, then it's not you anymore, right? Like people aren't engaging with you. People are engaging with these AI agents and things like that instead. And yeah, look, you can't stop people making these things. You can't stop people using these things, and people will get successful with them. They will get more followers. But like you said, ultimately, like who is that follower that you're getting? Like, they just trying to randomly engage with some AI agent. It's not going to be the kind of audience that you want. It's not going to be the kind of people that you want to talk to. It's not going to be the kind of people that you want to engage with. It's much better, in my view, to grow slowly, purposefully, than use all these automation tools just to get that number to go higher.
Totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And
Uh,
but the numbers are good. Like I'm close to 10,000 followers. Like the numbers are good too.
keep putting Mubs in the packs. Keep following all.
Keep liking my posts, please.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like, repost, quote post.
But like I said, though, I haven't used any of those tools. So the fact that I'm close to 10,000 means that I think that means that people are liking the stuff that I'm putting out there and they're following me. And yes, I'm sure people are adding me to starter packs. I have no clue that what the heck the starter pack is about, but ultimately, people will keep following me. Hopefully, because they like the content that I'm putting out. So yeah, so
Totally.
hopefully we'll see if it all works out.
Well, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
I guess any other side projects that you're jamming on right now?
I mean, I thought about what I was going to do for 2025, and I was like, it makes sense to kind of lean into what's working, and I've had lots of different side projects. Well, I think I've built over 120 of them now. I
Yeah,
think is in my list, and it's pretty awesome to have all of those side projects. And they'll. I mean, there's probably like 10 or so that I do make sure that they're still running, actively maintain them, update them, stuff like that, which I will continue to do because they're all kind of related to my hobbies. Like I love sports and I love movies and things like that. So there's like three or four different side projects that I have that are kind of associated with those things, which I think I'll continue to push. But I think, since this is working, I think I'm going to lean into it. Like I will continue to work on the Bluesky directory. I think if I do side projects this year, it's going to be those other kind of applications tools that are associated to Bluesky that I have a way to kind of share with people and kind of have have access essentially. Like in some ways, I think I'm fortunate in that I haven't solved, but I've got inroads in the distribution side of things now. That to not leverage that would probably be a very bad idea. I think.
yeah, totally. I mean, even I guess it doesn't necessarily need to be Bluesky specific, but you just have enough eyeballs coming to the site that it would
Yeah.
be foolish not to post something to let them know that there's some other stuff that's going on, whether it's directly related to Bluesky or something tangentially related to social or community or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got, even like with the scheduling tool, like, I mean, I know we talked about Twitter, Twitter being too expensive and stuff, but like if it works, it works, right? Like, it work on Blue Sky, it will work on X as well. And assuming that it can pay people, I think it's all about how much you charge, right? Like,
Yeah.
if the X API is too expensive, you want to use X, and it's gonna be more expensive. But if you can show that the tool works, I think people would be interested in that. So I'm absolutely building social media tools, not Blue Sky specific tools. Like, even
Yeah.
like I said, that scheduler works across all platforms, LinkedIn, X, all of those things. So, but no, you focus where where you kind of have access. And so when the first version comes out, it will absolutely support Blue Sky for sure, but there's the opportunity to expand out
Yeah.
after that as well.
Yeah. I totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely started thinking about um, tools that wouldn't necessarily be starter pack specific, but more general to the ecosystem. And actually, just kind of like to your point in social media in general, like understanding followers and like where's opportunities for conversations and stuff. Because I'm sure there's some conversations that I'm missing out on that I would like to
Mm,
interject in and have a point of view on, or just
yeah.
say hell yeah and support someone in there. But you miss those things. So
Yeah. Even something as simple. I mean, I know some people have tried to build, or some people have started to build thread composer tools that allow you to build threads so that you can post them in an efficient way. But just I love long lived threads, right? Like, I love just adding to
totally.
thread, especially with like the building public stuff. I don't think there's very good tooling around that at the moment either. Like, in terms of, like, I have to go find the post that I made on my profile, scroll down, and then find the post, and then I can hit reply to it so that I can continue the thread. Like, there should be a tool where I can just say, look, this is a thread about this, and
Yeah.
it should know what the last time I posted on that particular thread, and then I should just be able to add to it easily. So things like that. Like, I think there's I think there's opportunities around things like that we haven't really explored because we haven't been able to on X, but because of the way that Blue Sky works and things like that, I think it's going to be a lot easier to,
Yeah.
to be able to make things like that as well.
Yeah. I totally agree.
All right, let's go grab some water.
Yeah. I know we've been going. We're almost a
Yeah.
hour and a half here.
How about you though? So what's some stuff that you're working on?
Ah, I definitely say towards the last quarter of last year was pretty much starter pack specific. Um, I when I first started checking it out, I wanted to figure out the OAuth stuff, and that actually took me a while to kind of wrap my head around. It took me at least a few days
Yeah,
just to get the actual like whole OAuth flow set up, and then recently I refactored that to where now I can kind of keep the tokens fresh in the background via like a
right,
scheduler just to kind of keep those things going, and be able to do stuff like on behalf of people
right,
in the background. But hopefully going to be pushing that out to site soon. I've been kind of taking a little bit slow because I don't know, people are still visiting the site a lot. I think
right.
I'm not quite getting your numbers, but I think I'm getting, let me see what the latest thing is here. Maybe a couple thousand people a day.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
yeah, about
I mean, that's way more.
2 to 3 thousand people a day. You
Yeah,
know,
that's way more than I thought I was going to be getting.
yeah,
No
totally.
shit. So it's pretty amazing.
Um, and it's been indexed really well on Google, so I think that's part of it.
Right,
I'm also seeing a lot of random traffic from ChatGPT, which is kind of an interesting refer that I haven't seen before.
right,
Um, so doing that, but then before I was working on anything starter pack related, um, I was working on a couple different things. Like I have this thing called link cards, which is like an OG image generator. And that's
All
actually
right.
an old Laravel project that one of my other sites that I use it on kind of DDoSed it again. So I have this npm directory explorer called uh,
Okay.
packagestats.com, and all those pages actually have an OG image. So it's generated over 3.2 million images.
Oh wow.
And so, and it's continues to grow by like 100,000 every other week.
Wow.
um, so I'm actually going to rewrite that and make it to where that's a little bit more efficient and actually try to start selling that, and actually expand it beyond just OG image, but actually manage like the open graph data around your site and being able to
Oh,
optimize it.
nice.
Um, so yeah, opengraphs.com is
Nice.
the one I'm going to probably be jamming on. And then,
Pretty
I
good
worked at,
name. It's pretty good name.
thank you. And actually, I got the .com. It was a premium domain, but it wasn't ridiculous. So I figured I'd
Right.
just buy it now instead of waiting later.
Yeah.
Um, and then actually, we're doing this podcast, and last May I published my first kind of podcast over on my All Play podcast, and I really like just or like talking and getting ideas out of my head.
Right.
So I started working on a little app called Transmits, which essentially is like a field recorder of sorts, um,
Okay.
where I can just log my voice memos, and then I'm doing some local transcription via like the Whisper,
Right.
or like the local Whisper model, and it's all working in the
Right.
browser offline. And
Nice.
I have plans on growing that a little bit as just like a platform for audio. So kind of
Okay.
similar to like Vimeo, where you could just post up a single video or multiples or have a playlist or whatever. I feel like there's not a great place just to put audio and embed
Right.
it and have like a page where you could send someone to review it if you wanted to,
Right.
and keep it private or keep it public or whatever. I mean, there's SoundCloud and some other stuff, but I just don't feel like that works for just like spoken word, you know?
Yeah, it's more for like music and snippets of music and things like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah. So
Right.
kind of playing around some of those different ideas.
Yeah, I mean that seems I mean I know there's been a lot of interest. There was a lot of apps for like recording people recording memos and having them converted into AI and summarized and doing all that kind of I mean, I think people were selling those apps for like I think they were kind of one-time things, but it was like still like 60, $70 to be able to buy the app. But then it will like much like yourself, it kind of runs a lot of the transcription stuff offline. So it's not. I don't think there's an ongoing expense really to kind of operate against that. I do like the idea of the field notes, because I think just having a way to kind of come back to those and refer to those, I think is the interesting because I've always around this time of year, I always think like I should journal more. I should write in a diary more. But am I really going to sit down and write in a diary and type out something like that? Like, but if it was as easy as I could sit down at the end of every day and for like 5 minutes just like speak, I think that's more likely that I would do that. And then if it could then transcribe that for me so that I could then search on that to find specific
Exactly.
things that I talked about, or it could automatically categorize things for me, using AI and stuff. I mean, like that, I think was really interesting. Obviously the iOS tools are kind of heading in that way. I think they added the journal app, but I don't know how much it will do, some of the things that we just talked about.
Yeah.
I think obviously people like to talk. We like to talk. I mean, I like to talk, but I think we should talk more to ourselves. I think that's something that I don't think we do enough of. Yeah, we always wait to have a conversation with a friend as opposed to just we should have a conversation with ourselves so that we can remember the things that we want to in the future. Even if it's like I said, more converted to text, so it's searchable and indexable. It would be awesome if you did have that you could hand off to your kids or your
Totally.
grandkids or whatever it was at some point as well. Obviously, depends what you spoke about. It's some of these you might not want
Yeah, you
to,
might want to do
but
a selective edit.
exactly. But I think that's an interesting tool. I think people are starting to think about personal archives and personal things like that a lot more. And so I think that could be a very interesting thing to explore.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the other podcast I run is basically like a solo kind of journal update thing. It's like I try to keep it around 10 minutes and just talk about what's going on. It's a little bit of my like first build in public,
Right.
uh, just like contribution to try to get stuff out there and obviously share stuff on the socials. But I do find that it is a little hard, especially like working from home and like working on client stuff. You get so many of these things in your head. It's just nice to talk about it and actually hear yourself say something and actually reflect on that, even because
Right.
what am I saying? Like, do I really believe that? um, I don't know, but
Yeah, it is. It's funny. Yeah, I think. Well, there's the other thing that people find a bit surprising, but so my first work from home job I did in July of 2000. So I've been working from home for I guess that 24 years, 24 and a half years now. So uh world's changed a lot since then. Technology's changed a lot since then. We didn't do video calls and things back then. It was all on the phone and stuff. But um, it is. It was very easy when I was in an office to just, randomly run into people or randomly have a conversation after work, even walking home, walking from work to the subway station or whatever, right? Just randomly having those conversations where you articulate thoughts that you don't normally have to articulate because you're talking to somebody else. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the advantages of having like a journal like that, where you're trying to articulate thoughts for yourself or to share with other people, but working from home and a lot more isolation these days. Not just working from home, but people just seem to spend more time at home. People don't seem to spend time out as much as they used to
yeah,
anymore. And so I think yeah, finding different outlets, I think is like an interesting thing that I think we're all trying. To some degree, we're I think we're still trying to figure out how do we make friends. As we get older, it's harder to make friends. I think, but maybe we don't need to make friends. Right? Maybe we just need to find different ways to explore our thoughts.
yeah. Well, and hopefully people are still making friends. That's actually the one thing I was thinking about AI is um, when people start having all their questions answered through this robot that's kind of with you all the time, people stop reaching out to their
Right.
friends who might know an issue. And so I feel like there is a little bit of communication breakdown with some of the AI stuff that hopefully keeping stuff like this going and a little bit more like genuine kind of analog uh, conversations going will still be fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhat fortunate because I've been doing this for a long time. I've kind of made that conscious effort to reach out to people that I wouldn't that if you're in an office, you kind of expect things to happen by accident, but they happen often enough where you don't have to think about making them happen. And so over the years, having worked from home for so long, like don't have like a personal CRM or anything like that. But in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, well, I haven't spoken to that person in a few weeks, or I haven't spoken to that person in a few weeks. Like I should reach out to them just to see how they're doing, kind of thing. And I think more of that, if AI can help with stuff like that, I think that would be awesome. But yeah, I think that's also it gets harder as you get older because I think it's harder to know who when you're younger you're put into situations where you run into people that you have interests with, as you get older, that stops happening, right? Like you have to go make the effort to find the people that you might have things of interest with, well, where do you do that? How do you find that? And obviously, things like your social media and stuff. That originally was like the cool thing was that I could talk to anybody anywhere in the world who liked to who liked to build software. Like that was the very cool, awesome thing about it. And I feel we lost that somewhere along the way, and hopefully with more access, more people having access to the underlying information, who's posting what, we can make that easier again in terms of like, these are the kinds of people, here's a list of people who you might enjoy having a conversation
Yeah.
with actual real thought about why you might kind of like to engage with that person as opposed to just a random AI being matched.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many ideas, so little time, balancing
That's so
client
cool.
stuff with projects and even multiple projects trying to compete with time.
Yeah.
Um,
Gets tough for sure.
yeah. Well, cool, Mubs. I mean, I think, is there anything else you want to touch on or?
No, this has been a lot of fun. I think we've wandered through lots of different topics and conversations. It's been really interesting and fun. I'm just I'm very interested, very curious to see what happens with Bluesky over the next year or so. I think by this time next year we'll know pretty clearly if they've figured out what the long-term strategy is in terms of building something sustainable. If they figured that out, I think it opens up lots of opportunities for people to build on top of what they've already established. And hopefully for some of us, we've been along with the ride, which means that we've already accessed a lot of those opportunities already. But I mean, I think that to me, I think this is going to be one of those interesting years to that could see. It's not going to be like a sudden shift, but I think like I said, like we could be seeing next year thinking, how do we get to 100 million users? Because it's going to sneak up on us. I don't think it's not going to happen overnight, but it's suddenly we're going to
Yeah,
wake
these
up
kind
one
of
morning,
consistent bumps and waves that
right?
eventually get there. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious, and I'm curious to see what other opportunities it actually opens up for everybody as well. Because I think that was the sad thing about Twitter is that for a while at least they had open access to the APIs and things like that, and then they slammed the door shut on everybody. So we
oh
thought we
yeah,
had lots of opportunity, and then it all kind of went away. And with Blue Sky, you really can't. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the network, and then kind of how much more we can do. I think is going to be the interesting thing.
totally. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, this has been a super fun conversation. I think we went a little bit out of everything from old agency days to New York to, um, juggling side projects and making way too many, forgetting about them at some point, probably.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I know I used what I worked on.
I worked on yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I post some stuff
yeah,
up every now and then on that.
I got tired of. I originally had it on my own personal site, and then I'd make a new version on my personal site. I didn't want to like update all the side projects on the new site and stuff. So yeah, so that was a fun little way to list everything I'd worked on.
Yeah, and actually on your building threads thing, one of the things I was thinking about making is this thing called product tapes. So essentially, a way of having like change logs that you could kind of post to a single
Ooh,
thing, but then having the option of those then being essentially appended to the same thread
right.
on like a social media thing. I think they'd be kind of cool just as a way to aggregate all the projects, aggregate your updates, and then have a API that you could embed on your site or on your product site. Um, so I don't know, too many ideas.
No, that's cool. A friend of mine used to own shoutout.so shout out, where it was like you could just embed like a wall of posts that people had made about you or your product or whatever. It was kind of I think there's an opportunity there to do the same thing for Blue Sky as well, because like the people you engage with are on this platform now. They're gonna give recommendations and shout outs to you, but there's no way to easily embed all of those on sort of on your site for Bluesky. Now, obviously, it doesn't have to be just Bluesky. It could also include, all other social medias as well. But yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities for like tools that exist that only work for Twitter, that only work for there's other platforms that we can now say, well, let's focus on making them work really well for Bluesky. Oh, and then how do they work well for Bluesky? We can expand those to sort of other social media as well. So
Yeah.
lots of opportunities. Lots of opportunities.
Well, cool. So, what's the best way for people to follow along on your builder journey?
Yeah, I mean, right now, really only posting on Bluesky. So, Mubashar on Bluesky, also Bluesky directory.com, leveraging the domain feature
Totally.
to kind of make all of that stuff work as well. So I think it's very cool to be able to associate those accounts and actual sites that you work on as well. It makes it much easier to kind of find them as well. That's really the primary places. I have my own personal site is Mubs.me. Don't really post much there anymore. Mostly posting, mostly posting online now. But I think that's the easiest way and probably the most active way.
Totally. Well, awesome, Mubs. It's been great having you and talking and finally catching up. I hope we can catch up again soon. And
Absolutely.
obviously, I'm gonna go check out that profile feature on Blue Sky Directory as soon as
Yeah,
we hang
please
up.
do. Yeah, if
I'll
you haven't
log
listed
on and add
yourself,
another
yeah,
profile to your
so
pool.
that's great. Yeah, I'm hoping to get. I want to get to. Yeah, that's one of those ones where I'm doing it manually, but also encouraging people to do it themselves as well. But I want to get to. I think I'm about 800 right now. I think my goal is to get to 10,000 by the end of the year. But then obviously that would be 10,000 really well curated profiles in specific sort of areas of
Categories.
interest as
Yeah,
well. So I think that could be really awesome. Obviously, if it starts to work, if it starts to take off, then people will come and list themselves manually as well. And there's 25 million people on the platform, 26 million people on the platform now. You can have 26 million people on in the directory as well.
totally. Awesome,
Awesome.
man. Um, I guess we'll end it there. So thanks for
Yeah.
listening to Jam Sessions. I hope you all had a good time. We didn't capture any questions from anyone, but I think people are going on. I'm actually having a weird issue with Ecamm right now,
Okay.
where it's not showing how many people are watching, but I'm sure we had a few in here. And
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
and I'll let you know when this is up, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Have a great one. Later.